Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're reliving our favorite fantasies to look at 10 Final Fantasy games that deserve a remake. For this list, we'll be looking at the adventures in the Final Fantasy series that could benefit from the Final Fantasy VII Remake treatment and introduce a whole new audience to their stunning worlds. What game would you like to see get the full remake treatment? Let us know down in the comments. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. Whereas Crisis Core became a beloved entry in the Final Fantasy VII Compendium for expanding on its lore and universe, Dirge of Cerberus was met with a much more lukewarm reception. Following Vincent a couple years after the conclusion of the original Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus could have acted as a swan song for the series of games being set before Advent Children. However, the team was unfamiliar with making a third-person shooter, and the gameplay absolutely reflects that. As with the Final Fantasy VII Remake, a lot of the rougher edges could be smoothed out, especially the gunplay, and the story could definitely benefit from a few updates as the world of Final Fantasy VII has become more fleshed out since Vincent's last outing.
Find yourself. Gain control.
Final Fantasy VIII. Widely regarded as the black sheep of the original PS1 Final Fantasy entries, Final Fantasy VIII took a lot of risks that didn't fully pay off, especially when it came to the new junction system. Too complicated for casual players and easily exploited by pros, the junction system divided fans and prevented many from fully experiencing one of the series' best and most compelling narratives, as well as a beautifully told love story. While the junction system certainly has its defenders, it's easy to see why it turned off a lot of more traditional players. With a potential remake, the whole junction system could be streamlined or scrapped for something entirely new altogether. Final Fantasy X.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
The most recent mainline entry on our list, as well as a turning point for the franchise, much in the way Final Fantasy VII revolutionized the series only 4 years earlier, Final Fantasy X both modernized the series as well as maintained the core elements longtime fans loved. As the first entry to feature voice acting, to mixed results, as well as the new sphere grid which allowed players to learn new abilities however they chose and create their own preferred playstyle. We personally would love to see a more open world approach to Spira, as well as a deeper version of Blitzball. Not to mention a more actionized approach to combat, as the entry's customization options could make one of Final Fantasy's most important entries rival even the likes of the mighty Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Goodbye.
Hey!
We're gonna see you again!
Vagrant Story. The only non-Final Fantasy title on our list, Vagrant Story is still an important entry in Square's portfolio and canonically takes place in Ivalice, the same kingdom of Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy Tactics. Vagrant Story has long been praised as one of the most overlooked Square RPGs on the PS1, and fans have been desperate for a remake for years to finally give this underrated masterpiece its due. With its incredibly deep and consistently surprising storyline, as well as its strategic approach to turn-based combat, Vagrant Story could easily find a whole new audience, as JRPGs have borrowed many of these mechanics in the years since its release. Dissidia Final Fantasy.
How perfectly poetic. The mouse scampers off, but the monkey just keeps hanging around.
Huh?
Well, whatever. This should still be interesting, at least.
The Final Fantasy series is one of the longest running in video games, and each entry has their own iconic heroes and villains. And the city of Final Fantasy managed to bring nearly all of them together into one game to duke it out, much to fans' delight. While there are more recent entries into the Dissidia series, the original largely remains a fan favorite. Players take control of the numerous heroes and battle against foes from all reaches of the mainline Final Fantasy entries in one-on-one battles that let the heroes cut loose and send them and their opponents flying around the arena. A remake could iron out some of the game's weaker areas, while the advances the teams at Square have made to their combat engines would undoubtedly make this an unmissable spin-off for fans.
The battle has come to an end.
Final Fantasy IV. As the series' fourth entry, Final Fantasy IV took things back to basics and ditched the job system of 3 for a more straightforward approach to not only combat, but storytelling as well. Final Fantasy IV has become a beloved entry for evolving its approach to the JRPG formula and the more dramatic narrative the genre is known for today. The story of the Dark Knight Cecil's redemption still resonates with many fans who have come to appreciate the entry over the years. While there was a 3D remake for the Nintendo 3DS, a ground-up remake could make great use of Cecil's abilities as a Dark Knight and give players the over-the-top combat they've come to expect. It would also allow newcomers to experience the complete story of Cecil's arc by including Final Fantasy IV The After Years, as well as interlude to make said remake the definitive experience. Final Fantasy Tactics. Given the strategic nature of the active time battle system the Final Fantasy series helped to pioneer, a straight-up tactical approach makes a lot of sense, but Square really didn't need to go this hard. The Tactics series is one of the most beloved spin-offs of the venerated franchise, and the game received an almost instant cult classic status upon release. With factors such as character jobs, weather, as well as terrain factoring into each encounter, players not only had more direct control over their party and the outcome of each battle than ever before, but more customization options as well. With the original development team's other series, Tactics Ogre, recently receiving a remaster, now is the perfect time for Square's other tactical entry to make a comeback, preferably in that gorgeous HD 2D graphical style they're so fond of with their retro remakes nowadays. Final Fantasy, the entry that launched the franchise and saved the studio on the brink of bankruptcy. Despite its cultural significance, it's also the entry most overlooked by newcomers. While much of the series' DNA was already there on day one, the original Final Fantasy would be the one to most benefit from the remake treatment. The first Final Fantasy title has a surprisingly complex story despite its somewhat jilted delivery, and along with overhauling the combat, although keeping the active time battle system would be ideal, so a simple overhaul would fix a lot of its problems. While the Pixel remaster certainly reinvigorated interest in many of the old school titles, the game that birthed the franchise deserves more. Final Fantasy VI. Widely regarded as one of the best Final Fantasy titles ever made, the demand for a Final Fantasy VI remake isn't coming just from the fans, but internally at Square as well. The swan song for the Super Nintendo entries, Final Fantasy VI allowed more flexibility and customization for players with a myriad of weapons and magic attacks that can be taught to nearly every party member. Final Fantasy VI also has one of the series' best villains in the Mad Clown Kefka, who remains one of the few antagonists to succeed in his world-ending schemes. Final Fantasy VI became the benchmark at the time for the series' more dramatic form of storytelling, and despite the pixelated art, still includes some of the series' most emotionally resonant moments. A ground-up remake could put Kefka's entire world-ending calamity into perspective and give the jester the spotlight he commands. Final Fantasy IX. An entry that has become more appreciated in the year since release, although overshadowed by the might of Final Fantasy VII on the PS1, many have come to regard 9 as a superior entry in the PS1 trilogy. Perfectly blending the old-school medieval setting of the original Final Fantasy titles with a steampunk aesthetic of the more recent releases, Final Fantasy IX expertly encapsulated what made the series so iconic into one package. With rumors of a remake already being in the works, hopefully fans won't have to wait much longer to experience one of the series' best and most often overlooked entries. The demand for a remake is so great, some dedicated fans have even created their own using Unreal Engine 5, and the results are downright gorgeous. This is an easy win, Square. You know you want to. You owe the world an HD version of Vivi.
My name's Vivi.
Vivi, huh? You got a funny name. Pleased to meet you.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.